Hi, everybody. We're the Skeleton Crew, and today we are, for the first time, talking about a hadrosaur. It is, given the number in this game, it is incredible that this is the first time we've had an ornithopod or a hadrosaur specifically. And we are not starting with a famous one or one that is particularly well understood scientifically or well entrenched in popular media, which is perfect for us because we can stunlock about a variety of unrelated topics, and there's no chance that we will accidentally not be talking about something we need to mention. So,
very related topics.
Of course. All of them are always related. Before we get into it, a couple of orders of business. The first is that, if you don't already know this, you should be aware that we have a Patreon page. And if you're a fan of the Skeleton Crew and like the kinds of things we make, you should consider supporting us on Patreon if you can. If you can't, it helps us out a lot if you just do the normal like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Anything you do really helps us in the algorithm, really helps us find new viewers, and helps us share our content with as many people as possible. So thank you very much. We appreciate your support, as always. The second order of business is to inform you that I am Dr. James Napoli. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and North Carolina State University.
Sorry, we're having a predicament in this household right now. Okay. My name is Amelia Zietlow. I'm a PhD candidate at the American Museum of Natural History.
My name is Scott Johnston, and I am the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
I'm good thing this is on Riverside.
Who are you?
I'm Alex Rubenstahl. I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University, and only a memory of myself from years before.
And I'm Dalton Meyer, also a PhD candidate at Yale University. And together, we're the Skeleton Crew.
We're the Skeleton
Crew. We're the Skeleton Crew. Sorry, I was muted.
I thought that was just the delay. Oh my god.
You silly.
Well, Skeleton Crew, without further ado, I bring to you... Ooh!
This thing.
God, they're really pretty, aren't they?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I don't like their creepy hands.
That's unfortunate.
That is one of the really, really sad things about the... Well, I think it's just all of the lambeosaurines in this game, is that all of them are obligate bipeds, basically. And so they all have this, like, they don't look like they're supposed to be walking around like that, and that's because they weren't. This is our first hadrosaur, and assuming that our audience have never seen any hadrosaur before in their entire lives, especially the people who have been asking to see hadrosaurs, you might not know that hadrosaurs were almost definitely primarily quadrupeds. Think, especially in this game, like the Edmontosaurus, and
the Edmontosaurus.
And the Edmontosaurus and the Maiasaura and stuff like that, where they primarily walk around on four legs, run around on two legs when the spirit moves them. But I think because of the appearance of Parasaurolophus in The Lost World, ever since then, they've always been seen as bipedal because they have it like rearing up and defending itself. Which also is funny because if memory serves, in JPOG the Parasaurolophus were quadrupeds.
They were. They were actually better there. I'm okay with them being depicted bipedally, even though that's not correct for most of their time that they were walking. What I don't like is that they're walking around like their hands are wet.
The dryer didn't work in the bathroom.
You know, right, or like they're like a stranger as depicted in children's books where they're walking around, you know, with evil hands.
Scott brought up a term that I think might be useful to define for those unaware. in addition to quadruped, biped, which, walking on 4 legs, walking on 2 legs, Scott referred to them as obligate bipeds in this game. And as that name implies, obligate, they're obligated to be bipedal. We use that term in biology to describe things that only have like one mode of locomotion. So, for example, theropod dinosaurs were obligate bipeds, right? They weren't using their arms to locomote. Barring any weirdness with Spinosaurus, throw that in the garbage. But
Where it belongs.
they're obligate bipeds. Other animals are obligate quadrupeds, like ankylosaurs or cows. They're obligate quadrupeds. We're obligate
We
bipeds.
are obligate bipeds.
The opposite of that, or the kind of the other end of that spectrum, is what we call facultative. Facultative means that something can be occasionally one way. So many lizards are facultative bipeds. If you can think about a basilisk lizard running across water, when it reaches a certain speed, it essentially pops a wheelie and is running on only its back 2 legs. They can be obligate bipeds. In the same way, we expect that a lot of hadrosaurs in real life were facultatively, I think I messed up the word, lizards are facultative bipeds. And in the same fashion, we believe that hadrosaurs were likely facultative bipeds, that they could run quickly on 2 legs, but predominantly they were moving around on all 4s.
Right. I would actually make one note, which is that I think Scott said that humans are obligate bipeds. I would say we're actually facultative quadrupeds. We can walk around on all 4s.
Yes, we can, but it is not there's no typical gait that we do that is a quadrupedal gait. There's no like in regular everyday locomotion. It's like how technically speaking we could be facultatively I guess 0 peds. Like you can put your hands behind your back and like crawl, like army crawl like that.
But
I wouldn't necessarily say that that's
there's a developmental phase at which we're obligate quadrupeds as well.
It's the riddle of the Sphinx.
Oh my god, we're doing the Sphinx riddle.
What I do think this does highlight is that oftentimes biological terms don't have strict cutoff definitions. And so it's very easy to say some things like lizards are definitely facultative bipeds when they pop a wheelie. Like no one's going to argue about that. But people might argue about whether humans are facultative quadrupeds. Like some people might argue like what is semi-aquatic versus fully aquatic. A lot of these terms are a bit nebulous.
Right. And another place where this pops up a lot is in dietary ecology. Right, so you can be an obligate omnivore. And this is how many like generalist bear species are. So black bears and brown bears have an ecology that is predicated upon them eating multiple sources of food over the course of the year. One of the common examples of this that comes to mind is that grizzly bears have a annual migration to sources of salmon where salmon swim upriver to spawn. That's an important part of their life cycle. Those populations need to do that to get enough calories to survive the year. So you have other animals that are facultative omnivores, right, where they can eat multiple different sources of food, but they can specialize if they need to. Humans might be a good example of this, where there are human populations that either traditionally or even now rely extremely heavily on seafood or on farmed plant material, and other populations where there's a greater diversity of dietary sources, but humans can survive on a lot of different dietary proportions of different items. And vegans can eat entirely, right, you can be vegan and you can eat entirely plant material and you'll be fine.
Survive on entirely a diet of vegans.
Right, exactly. There are people who have eaten an entirely carnivorous diet, and that is probably the only thing that humans can't really do sustainably.
Yeah.
Right.
People are silly.
That's Jordan Peterson.
That's Jordan B. Peterson, whose mind was melted by his all-carnivore diet. Although...
The Chaos Dragon is represented by your daughter with apple cider.
But one thing that is worth noting is that, like, I don't know what the hell Jordan Peterson was eating, but I presume it was a lot of red meat and processed meats. And that if you're eating, especially a diet rich in organ meat and other tissues throughout the body, it's actually much more possible that you'd be getting a full nutritional load, right? It's possible. I think it is theoretically possible that humans could be facultatively carnivorous if they are eating the right proportion of different types of meats. I don't claim to know the answer on that.
Another fantastic example of that in at least the ecology of North America are coyotes.
Right.
They have an incredibly plastic diet that can change based on
Including
population
plastic.
density, including plastic. They can change on population density on like a bunch of things. There was a great talk at SVP I saw a while ago that just kind of blew my mind of just how absolutely adaptable coyotes are.
Anyway, that was interesting. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Segue.
Olorotitan is a herbivore.
Sort of related, actually. It's funny. It's funny we're kind of having this we're having this conversation about herbivory, carnivory, because I believe in I can't remember if it's a lambeosaurine or hadrosaur or not, and that I will in a moment discuss what that means. But I believe there's gut contents from a hadrosaurid that has, in addition to like plant material, crushed crustacean shells and stuff. So, our hadrosaurs. I mean, hadrosaurs are herbivorous, but maybe they're snapping up little crabs. Maybe they're accidentally eating the crabs.
Yeah,
they're eating maybe like soft bark or stuff. But anyway, yeah. So just a fun little thing.
I wonder if it could almost be like kind of an inverse bonnethead shark situation. If you guys know that one.
No, share with us.
That bonnethead sharks are confirmed to be the only known species of omnivorous sharks.
Interesting.
Yes. The only observed species of omnivorous sharks, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Because they live in seagrass beds, they hunt around for like buried sea life and stuff like that. They got the whole hammerhead shape. They're very, very good at finding things that are buried, and in the process of digging up and eating these buried animals, they consume an actually huge amount of the seagrass that's around them. And it was thought for a while that this was essentially just accidental, that it was just like, oh, they're just like, it's just, they just pass it, they get no nutrients from it, it's just they tolerate a large amount of like inedible material in what they eat. But then there was a study that was done a bit ago where they actually just raised some bonnethead sharks on exclusively seagrass. I forget exactly how they did that, but then they grew on that. So they're metabolizing it and actually growing, and so therefore they are actually omnivorous. And so it's not that it's essentially bycatch that they're accidentally eating the seagrass, it's that they're kind of going for both-ish, kind of. But I wonder if it could be a similar situation with some of these hadrosaurs. Well, I guess the old hypothesis of like they're eating all this plant material, and well, if they get some crustaceans in there and stuff, it's not like they're gonna turn their nose up at it. And if in fact they might actually actively seek out more heavily
crustaceous,
crabsy grass. I don't know.
Now, thank you, Scott, for that intro. No, I'm not. It was good. Sorry, it sounded insincere. We keep saying words like ornithopod and hadrosaur
and Olorotitan,
and we haven't told you. Also, we haven't told you what the animal's name means yet, which we always forget to do.
But now we're going to do it. What does Olorotitan mean?
So Olorotitan means big swan, because it has a very long neck and it is very big. And then the species epithet is heresies, which is referring to the county of Arhara in which it was found.
And it does have a big swanny neck.
Yeah.
I just want to say real quick, just maybe it's just the America-centric of me, but like just the mindset of just like Arhara County in Russia just sounds very rural America for some reason. You go to the Arhara County State Fair.
Some
I should note for the linguistics pedants in the audience that Olor is Latin for swan. Titan is Greek for a titan. It's the word for the titans in Greek mythology. So, it often is translated as gigantic or big or titan, but it refers to that in mythology. There's a general principle in biology that you're not supposed to mix Latin and Greek, which a lot of people who are smart use as a way to try to figure out people who are not smart. But in reality, many scientific names mix Latin and Greek, and nobody ever calls
Because they
them out
sound
on
good.
it.
Nope.
No one cares.
Right, nobody cares. In fact, I had this discussion recently, literally a couple of days ago at a wedding that I was at, where one of the people
Oh my
in
God.
attendance, yes, no, he independently brought up that he gets annoyed when people mix up Latin and Greek. And I said, yeah, but tell that to the people who named Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I started to say, from Latin Tyrannus, and he said, yes, in Greek saurus meaning lizard, and Latin rex meaning king. And you might think that I like this person.
Did you two kiss?
We did not kiss. This was one of those instances of, while I respect the hustle, I cannot possibly be pleased that another person in a social circle is doing the exact same thing that I usually do. And so I decided at that moment that we might be sworn enemies for life. I don't think I'll see him again, but he was another attendant at a wedding that I was
And
at.
if you do, you'll fight.
Yeah. Our battle will be legendary.
There could be only one.
Yeah. Now he was very nice though. He's the fiance of one of my girlfriend's friends, so I will probably see him again. And if you're watching this, it was wonderful meeting you.
But look out.
Yeah.
He's coming for you.
Keep one eye open.
Anyway, it's Phylogenum time. Ooh. Ooh.
Time
anyway,
to think
so,
with trees.
Like these.
Yes. Look all around
Look at
Olorotitan.
all of them.
Notice the many trees. Good. Anyway, quickly. So this is another one of our ornithischians. Those are our bird-hipped, with big air quotes because they're not ancestral to birds. Bird-hipped dinosaurs. One of the features of the group is that backwards pointing pubis, which is maybe related to an enlargement of the gut, which is honestly, when I think about sauropods, I'm like, did they have more than one stomach? Is something I've thought about. Other big herbivores, I have no idea. Maybe that's off base, but yeah. So backward pointing pubis, maybe they're making room for a big gut. That pubis is also probably pretty important in how a lot of ornithischians end up breathing, but maybe we'll talk about that with an earlier one. Anyway, so within ornithischians, we have ornithopods, which means bird foot, and that is because they have a 3-fingered foot. And viewer, you may be thinking, don't theropods also have that? Correct. They're called beast feet for some reason. Don't worry about it. I guess the tips are pointier, because ornithopod, I think the ornithopod toes are more rounded. Whatever. They're blunter.
Alex, I want to just chime in for one moment before we lose the thread on this. It's quite unlikely that sauropods had multiple stomachs, but they probably had a very enlarged stomach for fermentation of plant material. Multiple stomachs is like a ruminant synapomorphy, so it would be unlikely to have that convergently acquired. But enlarging the stomach...
Especially because they can't chew.
Right,
Well,
right.
Didn't say that during the video? Oh, this is in the video.
This is in the video.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if we had... Great. That's fine.
No, it's okay. I think it's something that's interesting to discuss, right? Ruminants have multiple stomachs because they regurgitate the cud and then chew it and then send it back down to a different stomach for more processing.
Okay.
And so the fact that it depends on chewing and that it's a synapomorphy of one group makes it pretty unlikely that sauropods would have it. But many groups of herbivorous animals...
You said sauropod.
I
thought you were going to make the point you're surprised sauropods
right.
don't retrovert their pubis because they're also herbivores.
Right. I mean, they're so barrel-chested, though. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, all sorts of herbivorous animals, like herbivorous squamates, herbivorous mammals that are non-ruminants, like everything enlarges part of the gut to ferment the plant material, which is probably what all...
Like elephants don't have multiple stomachs?
No, just an enlarged gut. Right. And they enlarge different parts of the gut. Sometimes it's a big stomach, sometimes it's a big colon. Yep, usually the descending colon. Yeah, hind gut fermentation, as they call it. It's usually basically have more intestines so you can ferment more plant material as it moves through.
Sure. Okay.
Anyway.
Good stuff. Anyway. Phylogeny. Anyway, so there are ornithopods within ornithischians. We have our thyreophorans, ankylosaurs, stegosaurs, and then our marginocephalans, which are pachycephalosaurs and ceratopsian ornithopods, are everything else, except for the early stuff. But we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, so ornithopods, the bird foot. Early on, these are these small plant-eating dinosaurs. They're bipedal, obligate bipeds most likely. These are animals that are sort of in the game. They're things like Dryosaurus, which, we can talk more about the origin of the group. But as ornithopods evolve, they really have one of these kind of, I don't want to say classic because it's not a straight line. Evolution is never a straight line. But you can see kind of the evolution of a bigger body plan and features related to support becoming a huge herbivore. This is reflected in the hands, and we can talk about this more when we talk about an iguanodontian, but you go from your little short 5-finger hands of a biped down, they get long, the forearms become elongate, they're walking on their hands, and those hands become hoof-like in hadrosaurs, which you can sort of... Maybe they tried to make it look like that here.
They kind of did the old school... I hate this word, but it's what I've only ever heard it referred to as the old school flesh mittens.
Oh, flesh
sort of thing.
Yeah,
with the hands. With
like the digits 1 and 5 look like they're free, right?
Digit 5 is. Well, wait, is there a digit? Are there 5 digits? I think there's 4.
Oh, I could have sworn
there's
maybe
4.
Maybe I'm just seeing the other one on the... Yeah, never mind. Yeah, I don't like looking at these.
Flesh mittens.
Horrid. Dreadful, truly. Anyway, so hadrosaurs...
Amelia, say the line.
I'm on a delay. You won't hear it for a while.
Okay, good. So, yes, I guess I haven't really said much about the timeline, but we have ornithopods as early as the Middle Jurassic, almost certainly earlier. And this shift towards large body sizes happens pretty early on in ornithopods. By the late Jurassic, you're getting things like Camptosaurus, which are sizable, like horse-sized. And then as you shift into the Cretaceous, you have all these iguanodontians and these other divergent groups of ornithopods, including some larger-bodied ones like Muttaburrasaurus, which is actually pretty early diverging. And then you get to hadrosaurs by the Middle Cretaceous, approximately. There are some kind of early members of this group. There's quite a transitional grade outside of it, which is something we might talk about in more detail in a video about what is monophyly, kind of a phylogenetics basics video. But we get to hadrosaurs, and there's one big division within hadrosaurs. Well, it's a big division that splits something into 2 parts. That's what I meant to say. Anyway, so within hadrosaurids, there are our lambeosaurines and our saurolophins, right? Saurolophins. Okay, good. Saurolophines, yes. We're not going to talk about saurolophines today because Olorotitan is a lambeosaurine, and this includes a few other animals in the game, and the clade itself is broken down into a few smaller groups. There's I'm going to embarrass myself because I don't think I've said this. Syntausaurines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. That's how you say Syntausaurus. Syntosaurines, Parasaurolophines, and CRETACEOUS, right?
Well, so all of these I think have the suffix "in," not "in," right? Because they're lambeosaurines.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry.
And so there's Syntausaurines, Parasaurolophins, CRETACEOUS.
I don't know that I don't know if CRETACEOUS is still a thing. At least looking at Wikipedia, it doesn't seem to be. But
well, the last time I learned about this group, it was so that's what I said. Anyway, but yeah, so that would include that clade, at least in my understanding, the CRETACEOUS would include Olorotitan, as well as things like Lambeosaurus and CRETACEOUS. And this clade appears to be characterized by large, kind of posteriorly projecting crests. And Lambeosaurines in general differ from the saurolophine hadrosaurs in that the crests are constructed very differently. In saurolophines, they are not invaded by the nasal passageway, and in Lambeosaurines, they are, and they're these crazy complex air-filled crests. I'll be honest, I don't know how much of the airway is in Olorotitan's crest, but I assume quite a bit.
Olorotitan's crest is not complete.
Mm-hmm.
Sad.
Which is one aspect of it that I think makes it hard to tell. It does broadly seem to conform to this kind of hatchet shape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any good evidence that it might be anything other than this. It's just not complete.
Sure.
But generally, right, the nasal passage is getting pushed into there.
Which
A lot of this crest is the premaxilla, which is
Yeah.
disturbing.
what?
Oh, the
Yep.
skulls are.
Wow.
The skulls are bizarre. The
No.
maxilla is tiny.
Right. What is premaxilla? But
Like the nasal.
I thought it would be the nasal.
oh,
Sorry.
the nasal's there too.
Yeah,
I figured
Amelia,
it
like
would be.
you see where the crest begins to bend backwards.
Yeah. No, I don't like.
Guess what that is.
No. No, I'm not gonna take any guesses about
Uh-huh.
this garbage. Like this, what are they? They think they are phytosaurs or something? Like, no.
What? Phytosaurs? What are you talking
Oh,
about?
they do weird
Their
stuff
premax
with their nasals,
goes
too.
too far.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about like a crest.
No.
Yeah. Makes them easy to segment. God bless.
Also, can I just say real quick, because like James referenced the shape of this crest as hatchet-shaped, which I have. Well, no, I'm agreeing with that, but this is so. Lambeosaurus itself, that gives its name to this group, the lambeosaurines, also is commonly described as having a hatchet-shaped crest. And for years, I looked at that thing and was like, people are on drugs. This looks nothing like a hatchet, until I flipped it around in my head and was like, oh, the spike at the back is supposed to be a handle. It's a hatchet going the other way. And it took me literally until like probably a year or two ago to actually figure out why every single person always said hatchet shape for that crest, when someone says hatchet shape, I expect this. All right, I'm done.
You
now.
got
I'm
dyslexia
done.
for shapes now too.
Shapelexia.
Thank God. God, hey, Amelia, that's not nice.
Look, you gotta. I'm very glad that you appreciated that joke, because the calculation of the delay that I had to get just right to make sure it landed within like a breath. I'm glad you thought it was funny.
Oh my god.
Incredible. That Amelia, holy shit. Alright, Goldfish Break. This episode brought to you by Goldfish.
This episode brought to you by 2-hour-long meetings before you film.
Granted,
Before we
it
lose,
was 2 meetings. It was 2 hour
Right,
long.
2 1-hour long.
yeah, it was long. Shut up, dweebs.
I want to. When we've collected ourselves, I'd like to make a comment about the crest.
Also, it was more like 2.5 hours.
Alright, let's go. Crest.
So pause.
What was your comment?
Pause and zoom in on the crest.
Happily.
Ooh. Now that we're looking at the face, I'm realizing it doesn't really have a keratinous cutting beak edge.
No, it doesn't.
Can you go on the
I
sun
find that for
side?
some reason, the sun reflects so brightly off these crests. It's like luminous. Oh, whoops.
Oh yeah, they're
no, hang
they're
on, no.
okay. That's
I'll
fair.
go on the
Do
sun
we need?
side.
I guess if we're seeing the crest, we'll be on the dark side.
The dark
You
side.
want to be on the dark
crest.
side?
No, I don't really have a preference. So there's a fun thing I've learned about the crest, which is that
Oh, did
I
you
was
look up which bones?
oh yeah, I looked up the bones. So I knew that the premaxilla was forming a lot of the front of the crest. What I did not know is that the premaxilla is basically, it looks like a long tube that has been bent to a 90-degree angle at one end. So it goes like, comes down like this and then goes right back up and goes back up the crest. So the front edge of the crest is what would be the median or supranarial process of the premaxilla in most dinosaurs,
This part right here.
from what I can tell. Right. So that's the part of the premaxillae where the two premaxillae at the front of the snout meet, and they send back a long kind of straight rod that would contact the nasal bones. And usually what that's doing is framing the anterior or front margin of the hole for the nostril. But what's happened here is that the subnarial process, which is the part that goes under the nostril hole to contact the maxilla, has also been elongated and shot up, which means that the premaxilla is contacting itself and forming what I would like to refer to as a pseudosuture, where the bone is growing around and recontacting itself and making what appears to be a suture externally. there's an image from the paper that we can put up here to explain this to people. But basically, the front of the crest and a lot of the side of the snout, all the way up to the crest, is the premaxilla, and the nasal is forming the back part of the hatchet. So the nasal has been
Jesus
entirely
Christ.
just
No,
shoved
no.
backward off the
I-
skull.
No.
Oh,
Yes.
I
We're
looked.
pointing out that it's the whole thing. The whole hatchet is just the nasal, which is behind its eye.
Oh,
Yes.
The nasal bone is
This
now
is a wretched
behind the
beast.
eye.
I
Right.
just looked at that photo.
It's
And
like
this is all of these lambeosaurians. They're all horrible
One of
monsters.
you put it in the chat. I want to be upset about it.
Oh, don't worry.
it's like someone did one of those like bam heel strike to the nose thing to shoot it up into your brain, except it just continued on and just exploded out.
Right.
Oh
I
my
just
God.
like that the image has to label the two parts of the premaxilla as PMX1 and PMX2. So here, this
Yeah.
actually shows it pretty well. The boundary between PMX1 and 2 is essentially, it's not
That.
exactly in the right place, but it's essentially that ridge right there. So
Yeah.
below that, going right over the eye and backwards, is in that area is PMX1, and above that is PMX2.
Jimbo,
Which,
I think
hey-
this happened
Yeah,
in a lot of them.
Not uncommon.
I think it does
You
too.
know-
Yeah, I've just never thought
Oh,
about
God.
this as much.
So shit like this like makes me doubt homology to an extent that I can't quite articulate. Like it makes me doubt paleontology as a whole because like how do we know that that's really the nasal? Like I understand how we know, like I understand comparative anatomy and like the relationships of bones and things, but part of me just has to think like there's no goddamn way that that's still nasal. And like obviously these things are gone, so we can't like grow an embryo and see what bones are actually going where and developing into what. But and like I understand that in contacting the premaxilla, because actually to sidetrack a little bit to a comment I think that we had with someone asking us how do we actually know like what bones are, like where they go in a dinosaur. Like the answer is comparative anatomy, and like so based on where the bones are positionally in other animals that are closely related, but also like in all animals with bones alive today, the pattern of bones is the same and the relationship of those bones to each other is largely the same. Even
Mhm.
like so like they're stretched and pulled and kind of put in different places. Sometimes they fuse, sometimes they go away, but the overall relationships stay the same. That all said, this is disgusting and wrong. And I don't know. This is a trick. This is a trick placed in the earth to fool us.
This is
For-
a hadrosaur. They were, I think, on almost every continent.
I can't abide by
So
Yeah,
they have
and
to be winners.
so for everybody to put our horror into perspective, like, okay, actually, this is going to be showing the hands of people who haven't taken who haven't taken human anatomy. Humans don't have a premax. do
No.
they?
No, they do
Or
not.
do we?
Um,
Okay,
we're
but
one
if
of the
we
few
would,
few mammals.
it would
that
be like, it would if we would have it, it would be like a very tiny bone, like right here.
does. Mhm.
And on this animal, it is exploding up, back, taking up the entirety of its face and going out the back of its head.
Right.
Dear viewer, understand that even in us, human people, with silly faces that are stupid and don't have a long front, which is cool, because the cool animals do that, except for frogs, which are also good animals. But viewer, understand that even in humans, our nasal bones are not literally completely behind our eyes.
Right.
Us, things with eyes on our front and a very short face rostrum, are like the in profile, everything's still sort of supposed to be there, like positionally where it's supposed to be. And these things have taken like basically this portion from your upper teeth, your nose, just basically up to here, and they've said, "Oh yes, what if we were to put this on
is
the
like
other
a
side
pug,
of your head?"
But like if someone bred this, like all the people who get outraged about pugs, I'd be like, I need to direct your attention to something far worse.
Right. Now, I think the point that I've wanted to make about this is that, Amelia is exactly correct, that the way we usually determine skeletal homology, and there are times where this leads us astray, but it generally works, are in what we often term the topographical relationships of the different bones and the different structures. So where the eye tends to be, where the nostril tends to be, and how the bones connect to one another. The reason I bring this up is that the topographical relationship of these bones to the nasal passage would indicate that the nasal passage is shooting up the crest, doing a hairpin turn within the crest, and then coming back down so that it can end right in front of the eye, where the olfactory bulbs of the brain would need to contact the nasal epithelium for this animal to have a sense of smell. And you can kind of see this in some reconstructions.
The vomer is also tucked up in there in a way you wouldn't expect.
Is it really?
Yeah. No, so you can't tell, and this is a more general ornithischian feature, but it is kind of present in a lot of hadrosaurs in a kind of exaggerated way. But hadrosaurs, if you were to look up at the roof of the mouth of a hadrosaur, it's the insane dental batteries, which we'll talk about in a sec, and then huge just walls of maxilla, and then an enormous midline opening with probably like a very thin vomer septa. Like, there's just this horrible vacant space in their head that just goes up way farther than it looks like it should be able.
Horrible. Vacant
Yeah, these are
space.
incredibly vacant.
It's a really nice eye, actually.
Yeah, it's
So
actually
is this
really well
scaling? Is the scalation accurate to hadrosaur? Because we have, dear viewer, we have so much hadrosaur skin.
We don't have facial skin, though. As far as I'm aware,
do we?
All those mummies, we don't have any facial skin.
Yeah, actually, like a lot of them, it was prepped off.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Wow, cool mummy. Let me prep off all the facial skin so I can see the bones."
That's sad. All right, so maybe that's what it looks like.
Which, again, also, I think I've mentioned this before. I've had literal, actual nightmares about realizing too late that there was soft tissue preservation on the skull of an animal that I straight up prepped through and I didn't know was there. I've had actual nightmares about this.
Dreadful. Truly dreadful.
So, James, I think you were saying something about its nasal passage.
Yeah, so in Olaf Mulleman's 3D model of Olorotitan, which he made a really, really, really beautiful skull reconstruction of it, you can actually kind of see a swelling on the crest that I think must be accommodating the space that's been hollowed out for the nasal passage, because the crest is very thin. And, it's very, very thin mediolaterally, so it in one area it's just bulging clearly. I would imagine that's because it's being hollowed, so that the nasal passage can go up and then turn and then come back around and then end right in front of the eyes for the olfactory bulbs. It's incredibly cursed. This is one of the more upsetting things I've realized about dinosaurs. Especially, I don't like the pseudosuture between the premaxillary processes. I find those really bizarre where it looks like it's just forming a suture with itself. I got very tripped up when I was doing my PhD because alligator pterygoids also do this, where the pterygoid... I'm sorry?
What?
He called you an amateur.
Of course. But I didn't know that they did this prior to my research on them. So the pterygoid in crocodilians is where the internal nostril is. Alex could talk a lot more about that. I won't steal his thunder on it. But the internal nostril, or choana, is sitting entirely within the pterygoid. In all modern crocodilians, right?
Yeah. It's locked in... Yeah, it's locked in the crown, a little bit outside the crown.
So it's forming this large opening. But in alligators, there tends to be, at least in alligators, I don't want to speak out of turn for other animals I haven't studied, there tends to be a little projecting point coming down from the anterior side, so the front, coming back toward the back. And then they grow during ontogeny a lamina that moves from the back toward the front and contacts that point and cups it. It looks a lot like the contact between two bones should look, but it's just this pseudosuture that it's forming around itself as it grows over itself. It's a very, very weird thing to start observing, because it's just not something that's common enough that you really cover it in anatomy education. And if you're not good at what you're doing, I think it would be very easy to misinterpret that as a suture and then invoke the presence of some neomorphic bone that is not actually there. With the crocodilians, I had to convince myself I was understanding it correctly by segmenting it out of the CT section and really showing, there's one bone, it's just contacting each other or it's contacting itself rather in a new place.
Yeah. So one of the things that James brought up on the incredibly weird cursed skull anatomy of these incredibly beautiful animals is that the nasal passages are funky and do extend up into that crest. And there actually is a hypothesized practical reason for that, or a functional reason for that. And that is that the lambeosaurine hadrosaurs, the ones with these big elaborate head crests that have, as a rule, their nasal passages go up in there, it is hypothesized that those incredibly elaborate head crests were both a visual display and kind of a resonating chamber that very often is analogized to be like a brass instrument that has tubing and piping that goes up around, bends around on itself, and would allow these animals to make really elaborate calls that oftentimes are very much, again, analogized to be like brass instruments, a lot of honks, a lot of like singing almost. Hey, as it's doing it on cue, except for one of my criticisms about the in-game Olorotitan is it doesn't sing. It's actually very like bellowy and kind of like traditional, almost dinosaur roary, and maybe like call it speculation, call it whatever you want. I like it when my lambeosaurs like really lean into that like haunting like like melody that these animals. This is like, at least again as far as has been proposed, or at least is the scientific the modern proposal on these. This is a living musical instrument in some ways, and it's kind of disappointing to me that it's such a beautiful model that has these gorgeous colors on the head crest, and then they don't make it do the thing that the head crest is supposed to do.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah. We should talk a lot more about the vocalization hypothesis when we get to Parasaurolophus, because that's the one where it's really been studied. Yeah, I mean, absolute classic. Well, I don't know if
we can add a new sound effect to our sound library with that one.
Oh my god, more honks.
Is there? Oh wait, we kept saying we'll talk about the dental battery.
Battery.
You know what we should talk about?
Let me find one that's opening his mouth.
Who's doing the dental battery?
Ladies and gentlemen, you may think that mammals. This is what I hear from mammal chauvinists. There are still paleontologists among us who say that mammals are the most advanced group of vertebrates in almost every way. They say that they have the most advanced brain, which they do. That's not really debatable. If you could plug whales together in the series, you could probably use them to render like Avatar 3.
Can they run Doom though?
I think a whale could run Doom.
All right.
I agree.
Hey, biomechanicists out there, let's see if we can get a whale to run Doom. Bioethicists, don't listen to us.
How do you get the Silicon Valley people to care about whale conservation? It's just convince them that they're a supercomputer just waiting to be harvested.
I don't like these teeth.
I hate it too. What these
they're
teeth,
not bad.
They do a good job conveying the essence.
They do.
I guess.
They do. Anyway, this is a long way of saying people generally point to mammals as being the most advanced example of a group of animals that have developed adaptations for mastication. I didn't bleep that word, because if you think I should have, you didn't hear me right. I said mastication, which is chewing. I did not say anything else.
Ayo.
Mastication is just the act of chewing that all mammals are generally doing.
It's a healthy and normal thing. All mammals do it.
If you're a modern animal biologist, you will generally look to mammals as the group of animals that masticate their food. But dinosaurs, especially ornithischian dinosaurs, seem to have done the same. And hadrosaurs in particular have the most advanced chewing adaptations of any group of vertebrates that we are aware of. It is truly an evolutionary marvel. I think if hadrosaurs were alive today, we would be extremely interested in the evolution of their chewing anatomy, in the same way that there's many people who've made their careers just in studying the evolution of mammalian chewing. Hadrosaurs do all that and more in spades. Rather than have a set of molars that are anatomically and developmentally constrained so that they always occlude in the same way, hadrosaurs have literally thousands of teeth in the mouth at any one time. They are all employed in this massive structure that we call a dental battery. They have uneven layers of enamels that the teeth sharpen against each other to always maintain a consistent cutting surface. They have not just, I think, 3 types of enamel. There's like 7 different types of enamel within the tooth that are all deposited in different layers.
It's really complex.
Damn,
Right.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of the most intricate feeding adaptations we have ever seen. The teeth grow in a mass, right? So that they replace, like, they just wear down, essentially, and there's always a new one replacing them, maintaining a consistent chewing surface. So they never have a problem of missing individual teeth like theropod dinosaurs would have, for instance, where there would be gaps in the tooth row when new teeth are growing in.
I saw an SVP talk once that was describing the structure of their enamel. This is back, I think, at my first SVP. That compared it to the enamel that you see in horses, where horses have a particular microstructure to their enamel that I think is referred to as wavy, that helps prevent the tooth from being damaged in such a way that like the whole grinding surface doesn't function. And it seems like their enamel was structured in the same way, so that they're taking on wear and tear in such a way that they never lose the complete grinding surface.
Right. No, it's amazing. This is essentially like an industrial solution to processing vegetation, right? I think there's a reason that these animals become so common in the ecosystems where we know they were present, right? Something weird happens in North America ecologically during the Cretaceous, where, particularly in North America, the story is entirely hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, with a pretty conspicuous absence of a significant sauropod fossil record for almost the entire late Cretaceous. And one has to wonder if there is some degree of competition happening here, where hadrosaurs are just processing material way, way more effectively than a sauropod could ever dream to. That's a hard hypothesis.
One might think of Asia, where there are both.
Right, but we know that hadrosaur evolution, like especially advanced hadrosaur evolution, does seem to be a North American story. We have much more primitive forms in Asia until the Maastrichtian.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I mean, but there's still Syntosaurans, Parasaurolophins, and Brithosaurans in Asia by the Campanian.
Are they in the Campanian?
Let me check on Syntosaurus.
I thought that all of those were Maastrichtian.
Syntosaurus is Maastrichtian. But
as is
this.
Also...
As is this, yeah.
Yeah. But I think Syntosaurians don't ever show up in North America.
No, but I wonder if they have a North American origin. Is I guess what I'm getting at.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't think this is particularly likely, right? It's hard to test scientifically anyway, and it's more likely that sauropods just did not do well in North America for other reasons because they were doing just fine everywhere else. But it is something that crosses the mind when you see how advanced these animals are.
We do have Aralosaurus from the lower Campanian of Kazakhstan.
Right, but there's I guess what I'm getting at is there's a pretty big gap in the record, and that's not a particularly derived animal, right?
It's
which animal?
Aralosaurus.
Oh, that's how it's Aralosaurus.
Isn't it? Is it an Aralosaurus?
Oh, it's a lambeosaur?
I think
it's a early diverging lambeosaur.
I remember when there was that one dumbass line in Jurassic World where they're fighting the Indominus and the kid very weirdly and cryptically says we need more teeth, and I had the thought of just what if an Edmontosaurus just showed up? It was you didn't specify. It's just it's got thousands.
It just bodies the Indominus Rex directly into the lagoon.
Would have made that movie a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
Like,
There's
I
one
have a
thing I
question.
want. What's that, Alex? I'm sorry.
Do you think if you got your forearm stuck between those shearing planes, like your average hadrosaur would just be able to bite like directly through your arm, like make a nice clean crunch?
I think it's going to deglove you. It's going to be like an industrial accident. It's just going to pull all your skin right off. Yeah.
It's not necessarily like cutting surfaces. They're mass grinding surfaces. Like it's
right, but I mean, it's a human arm.
True, but still, it's wide teeth.
Okay.
I'm reminded of a sign I saw by the side of the road a lot in Maine this past weekend. The sign was always for people offering services with stump grinding. This animal could stump grind.
Have we just when we're on the topic of dental batteries, have we mentioned that ceratopsians also do this, but not as complicated?
Worse.
We have not mentioned it, but I have one more thing I want to say, and then you can bring that up. One thing that I wish I could talk about more that I can't, unfortunately, because I don't think a lot of the research has been published, is that Mark Norell, my former PhD advisor, and one of his colleagues, Greg Erickson, a leading specialist in dinosaur growth and histology, actually got a grant from the Department of Defense to study hadrosaur dental batteries, because there's actual potential technological implications of some of the particular adaptations that they exhibit. I can't say anything else, but it seems that there's like pretty real material science implications and applications to what they study in hadrosaur dental batteries, which is an example I love to bring up to people who doubt the fundability of paleontology as a source of new innovation. I think that innovation as a deliverable should not be a prerequisite for scientific discovery. Knowledge is an end of its own, the pursuit of knowledge is a noble goal in its own right, and technological innovations usually come from a large body of knowledge, not necessarily the direct porting over of an advancement from one field into another.
Right.
But if you must depend on there being some technological application of what you've studied, you might find it with dinosaurs, and I think that's very cool.
The military-industrial complex is always interested in something.
So, fans of hadrosaur feeding videos may have previously seen... For the perverts in our audience, you may have watched Prehistoric Planet.
Jesus. This is independent of you being a pervert.
Right.
People watch Prehistoric Planet.
Perverts.
Statistically, some of you.
Right. It is entirely possible. If you really like watching hadrosaurs eat a lot... What did you say, Alex?
I watched it.
Those of you who like watching videos of hadrosaurs eating so much food that they fatten themselves up in only a couple of weeks may have seen a scene in Prehistoric Planet where they're depicted as living in a volcanic mountainous landscape and selectively raising their young in a kind of volcanic wetland environment with fast-growing horsetails as a primary source of food. And they show these horsetails as being something critical to their life cycle, where this fast-growing plant material can sustain the early growth of young Olorotitan. This is a really dramatic backdrop for a lot of the segments on Olorotitan. I think it's one of the most beautiful from Prehistoric Planet Season 1.
Very striking.
Very striking.
The like black sands is just gorgeous. You don't see that much in dinosaur docs, which is why I bet they decided to do that. Right.
You certainly don't see that in the Cretaceous scenes in Walking with Dinosaurs, where it's just a black sand volcanic hellscape.
Shut up.
No,
Shut up. It's cool. It's really cool.
It is
I
really
don't care
cool.
if it's not the Hell
It's
Creek.
really cool. It's very aesthetic. It's very like millennial influencer, to just do this like very, very striking black sand, high contrast, minimalism. We love it.
Remember, T-Rex is going to do an apology video playing a ukulele for looking so shit.
Yes. But Dalton, I understand that you've actually done some reading on the environment that this animal lived in.
When we make the enclosures to put these animals in, we do our best with the tools given to try to put it in a naturalistic environment that represents what we know of the paleo environment that we find them in. And I don't really know anything about the paleobotany here. You can see there's some anachronistic plants. I just kind of threw those together because I thought it looked nice. But what I did do in this case is I intentionally picked the Isla Sorna map because I could put a river right next to these big mountains, and I could try and make the landscape a bit more mountainous. And that is because Olorotitan is found in a group of sediments that were all deposited in what we call mass flow events. And so what these are characterized by is you have a lot of like fine-grained sediment, which represents kind of typical water flow conditions of some kind of body of water, which would in this case usually probably be like a slower river, maybe a lake. And then those are interrupted by massive deposits that of big rocks, small rocks, kind of all mixed together and jumbled without any kind of sorting. And what that's showing is that all of that material slumped down into this area kind of in one event. And it looks like the Olorotitan holotype was deposited in one such gravity flow or mass flow event. For those to happen, you need some kind of topography. So think of a landslide, right? That's where you're getting all of this material. Is something that's from a higher slope is then succumbing to gravity. The structure of the sediment is failing, and all of that material is sliding downhill. In the paper that describes the geology of this area, they invoke a couple of potential highland sources for this material that are nearby to where Olorotitan was found. It's unclear exactly where the material came from. It's also unclear how close to the site this mass flow event would have occurred. So it's possible that the Olorotitan holotype was found kind of right at the base of some mountains, or it may have been a bit further away, in which case it would have been a larger event that carried sediment further downstream into what was otherwise a pretty calm water environment. But in any case, depicting Olorotitan with some nearby mountains is extremely appropriate given how we found it. And so it's also pretty appropriate for where they depicted it, and probably informed their depiction of Olorotitan in Prehistoric Planet, is the sedimentology. Which I plug not only to plug the enclosure design and why we do things in the game, but also to highlight the importance of geology to paleontology, and understanding, sediments and sedimentology to understanding the environments in which these creatures are living.
Okay. There's one final note that I would like to bring up about where we found Olorotitan. And that's that generally in this region of northern China and Russia, in what we call the Amur region, there's a lot of pretty poorly known and poorly understood hadrosaurs. Olorotitan is, to my understanding, the best preserved of any of them and the best scientifically understood. But it's likely, in my eyes, that there's a pretty rich dinosaur ecosystem up there that we're only just beginning to understand. It doesn't seem to be dissimilar from other latest Cretaceous ecosystems in whole, right? We find a lot of lambeosaurine and maybe saurolophine hadrosaurs. I'm not sure about the current understanding of the assessment of a lot of material from there. But we're generally seeing this kind of pattern of rich hadrosaur fauna, possibly other sorts of general late Cretaceous dinosaurs like oviraptorosaurs and ornithomimosaurs and tyrannosaurs and ceratopsians, maybe sauropods. I think it's very interesting to see how our understanding of that region will develop as more material is found, and hopefully we find more well-preserved fossils like Olorotitan, because the Olorotitan holotype, it's not dinosaur park formation good, but it's a
nice,
pretty
yeah.
good
It's
specimen.
nice.
It's a nice specimen. Yeah, it's not scrappy.
Yeah, and on the topic of like other dinosaurs that it would have lived alongside, there's actually kind of a nod to one of them in the game. In that I don't think it was found in the same formation, but it was found at least. It was probably a contemporary and probably shared an ecosystem with the other hadrosaur, Tyrannosaurus, which was an incredibly Parasaurolophus-looking dinosaur. Kind of just looked like bigger Parasaurolophus.
And you know what it is now?
Parasaurolophus.
It is also considered now a very Parasaurolophus dinosaur.
Because it's Parasaurolophus?
It got re-nested. Newer phylogenetic analyses find it nested within Parasaurolophus, so it is now Parasaurolophus gianniensis.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say that Jurassic World kind of gave a nod to that, in that there's one locality in Asia where if you send dig teams out, you can get Parasaurolophus fossils. So I guess that wasn't accurate when they made the game, and it's accurate now. So congratulations for, I think, the only time that has happened in the Jurassic franchise.
They they had the Amargasaurus
Right.
issue of where they failed to predict the future, so they did predict the future for Parasaurolophus.
Oh, wait, Velociraptor as well.
With
'cause
Utahraptor?
Then Utahraptor afterwards. So, okay, this is the second time.
Right. As they say, a clock is right twice a day, even if it's broken. That is the phrasing of the popular saying. I did not mangle it because it's 12:42 a.m.
No.
and I'm tired.
Joke's coming through.
Not at all. Speaking of which,
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Everyone shut the fuck up now. We're going to talk about the design because you keep saying in the comments, someone does, that we're not talking about the design. And you know what? You're correct. We haven't been talking about the design much. So I'm going to talk about the design now. Or should we just, maybe we can all talk about what we like about the design when we rank it.
take
This
it
is what we're
to the
going to
viewer.
do now.
Let's go rank it.
So yeah, overall, I like it quite a bit. The colors are all bangers. I actually personally prefer the lighter body with the darker stripes as an aesthetic. Like there's one that's kind of like a pale green with black stripes. That's just killer. It is no, it's paler than that. It might be like the white. It could be that one, and then nah, that's not quite right. Sorry, I don't remember.
I think there's a lighter.
It's a lighter,
color.
yeah.
That one.
Oh wait, yeah, it was one of those pale greens, yeah. And then that one. That one specifically I like quite a bit. I don't know why.
It's very nice.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I like it a lot. It's very pretty. I actually prefer the flesh mittens to the hoof. The hoof is, I think, one of the worst adaptations that's ever happened. Adapted, evolved. Anyways, I like it a lot. It's very pretty. I like the colors. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about the other hadrosaurs.
Ooh, that's a good move. I was thinking about what to give this, and I listed the other the other five, and I'm like, all right.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll be generous. I'll give it an S. This color scheme in particular is so nice.
Okay.
So, I like this design a lot. To me, this is not an S tier hadrosaur because I think to me the only S tier hadrosaur in this game is Edmontosaurus, which is just stunning.
spoiler.
Well,
Wrong.
I haven't formally decided yet. I don't know for sure. But I do think that that's probably... This is beautiful. It's really well done. The hand, the limp, wet hands thing, like it's prancing through a field, like it's a person in a dinosaur costume, to me makes this not S tier, but I'm still going to give it a high A tier. I really love the design of the rest of the model. I love the color schemes. Just I can't really get over these hands. It just doesn't look naturalistic to me in a way that I need it to for me to rank it S tier. So high A for me.
Before you give your thought, I just want to point out that the Jurassic World Dominion Parasaurolophus, that's an S. But
I forgot that we're ranking that separately. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
That's also that's an S. Okay, so I am of a very similar mind to our esteemed doctor here, that essentially I love a lot about this design, and if anything, one of the things that frustrates me about it is its drinking animation and its social animation has it walking around on all fours, and it looks so much better. it looks like genuinely like incredibly notably better to me, and much more naturalistic. Now I know that we say all the time that we're not rating these based on their actual accuracy, and that isn't necessarily taking that into effect, but like it partially for me it comes down to the sounds that like I think that this is one of the most beautiful looking hadrosaurs in the game, one of the most beautiful looking dinosaurs in the game. I also think the colors and patterns are fantastic. I personally am a huge fan of the like dark black and incredibly bright crests. There's a couple that are almost a little bit too bright and they actually look a little bit too, at least for me, like almost look like they're glowing and bioluminescent. See our Styxosaurus video on that. Like
Yeah,
the
it's so
white one,
bright.
I want to like it, but it's almost it's too bright. I do like that it's almost that it's like wearing eye makeup. I like that a lot. But like all of those crests are just so nice. The striping on the tail is fantastic. It is as high of an A as I can put it without it being an S.
Cool, thoughtful, introspective. That's Scott Johnson, everyone. Signing
One of
off.
these days
Anyway,
you'll get the T in my name.
yeah, this is not a bad hadrosaur by any measure. It's not my favorite, as I might have spoiled earlier. And there's stuff about the design that I like, and there's stuff that I'm a little kind of meh on. Like the hadrosaur postures in this, for not every hadrosaur, but for a few of them, kind of drive me nuts. This is one of them. I don't mind the flesh mitten. There was even a paper that came out recently that showed that the soft tissue of hadrosaur hands was, it's not just horrible hoof. You can have other kinds of weird little hands, so I'm all right with that. I do think I keep looking the face. It looks very swan-like, but like I kind of want that big keratinous beak at the end. Beyond that, it's gorgeous. I like the colors. I like all the banding and the stripes, and I mean, I want to say a very high B.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
and it's not bad. I made a list in my head of the other hadrosaurs in game, and they stratify, and they each stratify in a position higher than this. So kind of by
All of them?
no, there are two others that I think sort above this one,
Oh, okay.
and with some distance. So I'm going to say a very high B.
Interesting.
I was gonna say all of them, really. Jeez, not to spoil my opinion, but
Yeah,
CRETACEOUS
so
sucks.
It's tricky. This is a tricky one, and I'm sorry to hold everyone up as I waffle, as I often do when it comes to rating these things. I have also started to rank the rest of the hadrosaurs as a comparative point, but I'm not unhappy with putting multiple of them in particular tiers because I think by and large the hadrosaurs in this game are pretty good. This is a beautiful design. I'm gonna play with the colors a little bit. Oh, I'm gonna go with that for right now. It is a little bright, but on this side you can see it. I love the colors so much. I think
They're so good.
I don't love the hands, so we've talked about it. I mean, flesh mitten or hoof. I think regardless of interpretation, like regardless of what Olorotitan had, it didn't really look like this. Like that's not like we've talked about it being more similar to a flesh mitten, but it's not a very good looking flesh mitten either. And yeah, the posture thing is a pain, but I don't want to punish Olorotitan just for being the first hadrosaur when others also have the posture issue. They plague them all, so I'm almost tempted, or not all, but they plague at least all the lambeosaurines, so I'm tempted to kind of throw that out with the bathwater because it's not really, it's an equivalent factor. I think it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful. I think the colors really make it. It's just there are a few that I like more. I think I'm gonna also have to go the highest I can give an A, like the highest of high A's for this one.
All right.
Okie dokie.
I think the A's have it then, don't
Yeah.
they?
I think they do.
The A's do have it. And that means that in an insert that Dalton will presumably record at some point, or Scott will, whoever winds up editing this video, we will rank Olorotitan as high A tier.
A tier.
There, it's been placed in the tier A.
Look at it, placed in the tier A.
Ain't that the bee's knees?
Ain't that a party sight?
Now it's time for wheel go round.
Are we ready to spin
It's
the
the
wheel?
wheel.
Spin.
Two.
Spin.
That.
Spin.
Spin
Wheel.
that
Wheel.
No whammies, no whammies.
Wheel.
Big money.
No whammies. Oh god, it's
Oh.
Oh.
Pyroraptor.
Oh, no.
No.
Didn't we already do this?
No.
No.
No? Oh, we did the feather sorry, right. The feather dinosaur DLC didn't have this.
Oh,
Oh
God.
boy, this one will be fun. Actually,
This is
we
gonna
have
be an interesting.
we have a lot to say.
We
do.
do have a lot to say.
For an
Tune
animal
in-
that's 2 bones, we have a lot to say.
Yeah. Tune in next week to see how many hours we can spend talking about a phalanx and a claw.
Probably at least one.
Hey, there's going to be fair. There's going to be a lot of bashing the French.
This
Godly.
is true.
I intend that to be kind of the rule of the video as opposed to the exception.
All right, guys. That's it for this video. We're going to get Alex to bed before he says more things that are cancelable about the French.
It's about the French. It's not canceled.
Yeah, that's true. You got to pass for that. But before we go, remember that as we told you at the beginning of the video, we have a Patreon page. And if you would like to, and you can support us there. Every bit of support that we get really helps us take the time that we need to make these videos as good as they can be and keep them coming to you. And so if you can and you're generous enough to support us there, we really, really appreciate it. If you're a patron on Patreon, you'll get access to a bunch of benefits, including our community Discord server, monthly patron Q&As, polls, and, of course, your name at the end of every video in the rolling credits that are on screen right now. We also need to take this time to publicly thank all of our supporters at the Gorgosaurus tier and higher, who, as of right now, I believe
I
there are
can read
7.
them if you like.
Yes, please,
Yes,
Dalton.
we'd like to especially give thanks to Benjamin Siepser, Philip Fico, Andrew Knittle, Florida Man, Max Ironpaw, Riley Shiro, and of course Wheat. Thank you all very much, and thanks to all of our patrons whose names again are flowing or have flown past your wee peepers.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And
Check us out on the Discord.
check us out in the Discord.
I'm in the Discord. You can talk to your favorite Skeleton Crew characters.
And Alex.
Right.
I'll yell at you.
They've been made real by Disney's Imagineers.
Long restricted to the pages of fiction was Alex Rubin.
Should he have been left there?
But now through a collection of gears and springs, I talk and I walk.
Hey, Alex, I've got news for you.
He's a real boy.
It's 1:00 in the morning, and I'm
Bye-bye.
stopping the recording here.
All right.